Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast with Justin and Brandon. We teased it in our last episode, and now we are here. It is the very first episode of our driver report cards, where we will be giving grades to each and every driver from the Qatar Grand Prix weekend. You might be asking yourself, Justin, Brandon, why save it for a sprint weekend at the end of the year where you have so much more to grade for your first episode? I don't know, maybe because we wanted to, and we wanted to make it hard on ourselves, and it's only uphill from here. So we've got a lot of things to consider. I'm sure there will be no controversy at all in this series, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Love creating new content, putting new stuff out there to further engage with you guys. So I'm pumped. I'm excited.
Yes, and it is not only our grades that will be featured in this, your grades will be featured as well. We already got some wonderful fan engagement on this one, but for future Grand Prix weekends, we want to hear your grades as well. So after every Grand Prix, head over to our social medias, fill out the forms, give us your grades, because we want to hear your opinions too. Hopefully we agree most of the time. Sometimes we will disagree, and we would love to civilly hear why you disagree in the comments should you not agree with our grades. But let's jump right into it, starting with Haas. Kevin Magnussen started the sprint in 15th, finished in 10th, started the main race in 10th, finished 9th. I have gone for a B for Kevin Magnussen. I think it was a solid weekend from him. A little bit let down in sprint qualifying, but had a good sprint. And then the main race, a little bit let down by the safety car. Probably would have finished ahead of Pierre Gasly in the P7 range should the safety car have come out at a different time. But I think it was a solid weekend from Kevin Magnussen. I'm giving him a B.
Yeah, I'm also giving Kevin a B. I think what really kept me from giving him a C is his sprint. I mean, he gained 5 positions in the sprint. He seemed to do well, and I think his qualifying there did hurt him. Had he qualified a couple of places higher, could have snagged a point, but it was a decent weekend from Kevin. Kind of a off weekend from Nico, which we'll talk about in a second, but kind of flip-flopped the normal way that Haas goes in the weekend. Usually Nico's good and Kevin's all right, but Kevin had a decent weekend.
Hey, Kevin's been looking better since he had his race ban, so I'm glad we're getting to see him out of Formula One on a bit of a higher note that isn't a race ban. The fans did give Kevin Magnussen a C, so they disagreed with us there. Nico Hulkenberg, I gave him a D. I wanted to give him higher. I had him in the C range. He started the sprint in 9th, finished in 7th, ahead of Max Verstappen on merit. Started the main race in 18th and did not finish. I have to downgrade him so incredibly much because of the start incident of losing it on his own and then taking out Esteban Ocon and Franco Colapinto. Had it just been a normal Grand Prix weekend, I would have given him an F for that. And so his sprint saves him a little bit, but he gets a D from me.
Yeah, I think for me, I've gone with a C minus. So I just felt like he didn't quite deserve a D. I think that sprint was huge, both in qualifying and in the sprint race. You know, he finished ahead of Max Verstappen, getting 2 valuable points for Haas when they really, really need them in a super tight constructors championship fight for P6 against Alpine. So Nico really delivered there for them, but honestly, can't get any higher than that because he did have pretty poor race. Obviously, he didn't finish and he qualified 18th, took out 2 other drivers. Doesn't get much worse than that. Other than maybe that time that Sergio Perez retired from the same race twice. We mustn't forget that. But anyway, we're not talking about Sergio right now.
Yeah, we'll get to Sergio Perez in due time. The fans gave Nico Hulkenberg a C as well. Sauber, Zhou Guanyu started the sprint in 18th, finished in 19th, started the main race in 12th, finished 8th. I've gone for an A for Zhou Guanyu. His sprint was pretty terrible. They put him on soft tires, wasn't really representative, but then he outqualified Valtteri Bottas for the main race and grabbed 4 points in finishing P8. So I think he is deserving of an A.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. He picked up some very much needed points for Sauber. It's awesome that they're not going to finish the season with 0 points this year after that performance from Joe. But yeah, it seemed like good progress throughout the weekend for Joe. I don't know if there was some car changes, some setup changes that helped him from the sprint to the main race. Probably so. But yeah, he had a great race and picked up some very valuable points for them.
The car change was not running the soft tires in the main race. That
Yep.
was the change. The fans agree, and they also gave him an A. Valtteri Bottas started the sprint in 13th, finished the sprint in 12th, started the main race in 13th as well, finished that in 11th. I've given Valtteri Bottas a B. I think it was a solid weekend from him. It is unfortunate that he has been absolutely handling Guan Yu Zhou all season and then is not the one to score points, finishes just outside the points in P11, but did overtake Logan Sargent, so he won't be finishing last in the championship. But solid weekend for Valtteri. I've given him a B.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was kind of he didn't do anything amazing this weekend, but he also didn't do anything absolutely horrible. Very consistent across the weekend, very close to getting some more points for Sauber. But yeah, this is a solid weekend from Valtteri. Kind of uh, underrated a little bit, maybe.
And the fans gave him a C, so they did not agree with the Bs that we gave Valtteri Bottas. Visa Cash App RB, starting with Liam Lawson, started the sprint in 10th, finished in 15th, started the main race in 17th, finished 14th. I have given Liam Lawson. This is the first one that I'm like debating as I'm looking at it. I am going to give him a D. I'm going to change it. I'm going to give him a D. I have C written on the seat, but Liam Lawson is getting a D from me. Lost all of the positions immediately in the sprint, and then obviously had the spin in the main race. Got the penalty for that incident with Valtteri Bottas. He has cooled off mightily since he has come back from Formula One, and with rumors swirling of Sergio Perez's exit, that is not what he needs right now. And so, yeah, bad weekend from Liam. I'm giving him a D.
I'm also giving Liam a D. I think he kind of fell off his rocker this weekend. It seemed like a weekend of chaos for Liam, especially in the main Grand Prix. And he was starting out so strong, sprint quali, got it in SQ3, qualified P10. It was looking like maybe he could scoop some points up for RB. Also, in the thick of that battle with Alpine and Haas, if they wanted to do anything, they needed to do it this weekend, and that didn't really happen. I think in large part to Liam Lawson. So I've also given him a D. Seems like he might have fallen off the rocker this weekend.
Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh on him because the V carb looked pretty slow, but Liam Lawson didn't help his efforts either. The fans gave him a C. Yuki Tsunoda started the sprint in 16th, finished in 17th, started the main race in 14th, finished in 13th. I have gone for a C for Yuki Tsunoda. Like I said, I think that RB was pretty slow this weekend. So Yuki Tsunoda, he was right next to his teammate for most of the weekend, but kept it clean, didn't run into anybody, didn't have any incidents. So I'm giving him a C right down the middle.
Yeah, I am also giving him a C. It just seems like, again, kind of similar logic to Valtteri's weekend. Didn't do anything great, didn't really do anything super duper terrible. But obviously his weekend wasn't as good as Valtteri's. He's just kind of driving around in no man's land for the entirety of the weekend, so kind of middle of the road C.
Yep, and the fans agree. They also gave Yuki Tsunoda a C. Franco Colapinto started the sprint from the pit lane, finished 18th, started the race in 19th, and did not finish. I am giving Franco Colapinto a D plus. I borderline gave him a C. This was a pretty poor weekend from Franco. Had he not started from the pit lane, he would have started the sprint in 20th. So pretty tough qualifying, but we only got to see half of a corner into his Grand Prix before that was limited. And then I also think his car is constructed from the 2023 Williams and popsicle sticks. Like I think they have just put that car together however they can with whatever is lying around in the factory. And so it was a poor weekend from Franco, but I'm not going to fully put it on him, so I would give him a D plus.
I've gone with a D minus. I think he performed really poorly, qualified really poorly. Obviously, we didn't get to see him do much in the race, and he didn't do much in the sprint either. Um, but yeah, it just seems like a really poor weekend. This is also right on the backs of rumors, like talking about his talks with Red Bull and them kind of ending. And, this is kind of just another data point to, further the rumor that, he's not going to be in the seat next year and that, it was just another hot start from a young driver. So, not really what Franco needed in that regard. I think it was a really poor weekend from him. So I've gone with the D minus.
Well, he did overtake Sergio off the lights in the pit lane start, so he has that going for him. Maybe could take that seat still, but probably not. The fans gave Franco Colapinto a D. Alex Albon started the sprint in 12th, finished in 15th, started the main race in 16th, finished 15th. I've given him a C. I think it was an okay weekend from Alex Albon. He outperformed his teammate. I don't think points were ever really on the table for Williams this weekend. I think they have just fallen off because of all of their crashes, and that has pretty much derailed their season. And then obviously, Lance Stroll made contact with Alex Albon on the first lap. That also pretty much ruined his race from lap one as well. But I think he did better than Franco. I'm giving him a C.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've also given him a C. It was a pretty, middle of the pack weekend for Alex. I think he probably did the most that he could with the car. But again, like we've been talking about, the crashes, I think have really hampered Williams, and they don't have a lot of resources at this time to put into this car to make it perform really well to get the points that they need. But so I think Alex kind of just did the best with what he could. But it's just a middle of the pack weekend for him.
The fans agree. They also gave Alex Albon a C. Alpine, Esteban Ocon started the sprint in 17th, finished in 14th, started the main race in 20th, and did not finish. I have given Esteban Ocon a D. Solidly outperformed by Pierre Gasly, knocked out in Q1 both times. And then obviously, we don't really know what he could have done in the race, getting eliminated on the first lap. But based on what is available to us, pretty tough showing from Esteban Ocon. I'm giving him a D.
Yeah, I've gone with a D minus. I think it was a pretty poor weekend from him. Obviously, the DNF wasn't necessarily his fault in the race, but it was really poor qualifying. Honestly, both sessions he was out in SQ1 and Q1, so poor qualifying. We obviously know that the Alpine does have some pace. And we also know that he wasn't driving the same spec car as Pierre, though. So maybe we give him a little credit there. Maybe a D minus is too harsh, but I'm gonna stick with it. So Esteban, D minus. I also feel like that ranking is a little lower because he did essentially get fired early from his job this weekend. So there is that to think about. But yeah, I'm going with a D minus.
Hey, who knows if that was his fault or what's going on with that? We will probably never fully know, but best of luck to Jack Doohan. Esteban Ocon, sorry we couldn't give you a better grade in the 1 week we get to do it for you at Alpine, but hopefully higher grades are ahead for him next year when he's at Haas. The fans are really giving Esteban Ocon the benefit of the doubt. They gave him a C, so the fans were higher on Esteban Ocon than we were. Pierre Gasly started the sprint in 8th, finished in 9th, started the main race in 11th, and finished 5th. I have given Pierre Gasly an A. I think it was a pretty solid weekend from Pierre. Obviously, didn't manage to score points in the sprint, but with it only being the top eight that score points, it is incredibly difficult to score in the sprint. But then the main race got a little lucky with the safety car, but really drove as well as he could, and that P5 is very, very important for Alpine. So I'm giving Pierre Gasly an A.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. P5 was huge for them. Picked up 10 points for the team. That makes their weekend next weekend in Abu Dhabi much easier. They just have to make sure that Haas doesn't do anything absolutely insane, like I don't know, a double podium or something. But yeah, it was a great weekend for Pierre. Qualified really well. Obviously, drove in the race really well. So great weekend from him. It's awesome to see him doing well.
Yeah, the fans don't agree with us. They gave Pierre Gasly a B. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll started the sprint in 14th, finished the sprint in 13th, started the main race in 15th, and did not finish. Stroll's getting a D on this one. It was solidly outperformed by his teammate. I mean, that Aston Martin appears to be fairly terrible, but he was way off. Fernando Alonso was never in a chance of getting points. Obviously, made contact with Alex Albon and then got the penalty and then wanted to retire, but then they made him do an extra lap because there was the penalty and they didn't want to serve it next race. Supposedly, there were problems with his car. I don't agree with that. I don't think there was problems with his car. I think it maybe the problem was in the cockpit. I don't know. But either way, I have given Lance Stroll a D for this weekend.
I've also given Lance Stroll a D for this weekend, and I think that D stands for Daddy's money. It seemed like a weekend that Lance really was just frustrated with the car, and we see these weekends every now and again where Lance just gets really frustrated and things don't go his way, and that just makes him more frustrated. And then, he does silly things, and I feel like it's just a really bad look on him as a driver. He doesn't seem like he's all in. So I've given him a D as well for kind of that reason. It just doesn't seem like has his heart in it or had his heart in it this weekend. But I do know he does love racing. Obviously, he wouldn't do it. It is a grueling schedule if he didn't love it to some degree. But this weekend, it didn't look like it.
Yeah, feels like we're really stacking those weekends now with Lance Stroll. The fans weren't as harsh. They gave Lance Stroll a C. Fernando Alonso started the sprint in 11th, finished in 11th, started the main race in 8th, finished 7th. I have given a B to Fernando Alonso. I think it was a very impressive weekend from Fernando. I think he put that Aston Martin where it should not have been. Obviously, Q3 for the main race and then holding on to that in P7. I think that is a solid performance. And yeah, I'm gonna give him a B, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I gave him a B plus. I thought it was a great weekend from him. Again, you kind of said it all. He was driving the car to a spot on the track where it shouldn't have been, especially in the main race where he picked up some valuable points for them. Obviously, they're kind of locked into the position that they're in the Constructors Championship. They're not going to be able to catch Mercedes, but still, always great to score points for the team when you have an opportunity. And yeah, I think it was a great weekend. Fernando gets a B plus for me.
Fernando Alonso is also one of the only drivers locked in mathematically to his driver's standing spot. So Fernando Alonso will be finishing in ninth place again this year. It was good to hear him excited on the radio about getting into Q3 and putting it P8 in qualifying. I was a little worried that as Aston Martin starts to fall off, we'd be getting grumpy Fernando again and we wouldn't get to see him at his height with Adrian Newey, but it seems like he still has the passion. I'm hoping Adrian Newey can turn it around for him, hopefully at some point in next season. The fans gave Fernando Alonso a C. They were not as impressed with him as we were this weekend. Oscar Piastri started the sprint in third, finished fourth, started the main race in fourth, finished third. I have given Oscar Piastri a B as well. And the results, they look great, but he would not have won the sprint should it not have been for Lando Norris switching on the last lap. He probably would have finished third, and he would not have finished on the podium should Lando Norris have not gotten that 10-second penalty. And so, looking at his weekend and how it went versus what it is on paper, I've got to downgrade him a little bit and give him a B.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp. It does look great on paper, and that's why I think on paper this is an A weekend. Fantastic weekend, but it is hampered a little bit. I've gone with a B plus just because, a victory is a victory. That's two podiums, for the weekend. Great qualifying. Obviously didn't get any pole positions or anything, but it was still a solid weekend from Oscar. So I've gone with a B plus. So yep.
That's a fair rating. Maybe that's what I should have gone with as well, but I'm not changing it. I'm sticking with my B. The fans gave Oscar Piastri a C. Lando Norris started first, finished second for the sprint, started the main race in third, finished in 10th. I'm giving Lando Norris a C, and that might seem harsh based on what happened, but at the end of the day, we could look back at him missing those yellow flags, and that could easily be why McLaren doesn't win the constructors fight. And I'm having to look at it as like if he made a mistake that threw away a P2 and led to him finishing 10th, I would have to downgrade him pretty heavily. And so we can argue about how harsh the penalty is, and it shouldn't have been that harsh. But at the end of the day, Lando Norris has to be downgraded because he was the one who made the mistake, however small it may have been. It led to him giving up a P2 and finishing 10th. So I'm going to go with a C for Lando Norris.
I'm going with a V minus for Lando. Um, I think I don't want to give him a C because he had a great sprint, and he was able to finish in 1-2 for McLaren, which is, obviously very helpful for them in the constructors. But yeah, he did make a mistake in the main Grand Prix, gave up a podium. That would have honestly really kind of locked the constructors championship up for them. I don't know if it would have mathematically clinched it for them, but it would have made Ferrari's weekend a lot more difficult next or this coming weekend if that hadn't been the case. But Lando gets a B minus. I don't think he's deserving of a B. Don't think he's quite deserving of a C because of the sprint and the qualifying performances he had, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, the fans don't think he was deserving of a C either because they gave him a D. They were very harsh on Lando
Oh
Norris.
yes.
Carlos Sainz started the sprint in fourth, finished in fourth, started the main race in seventh, finished sixth. I have given Carlos Sainz a B. Not the most impressive weekend, but he was always there or thereabouts. He was on the tail end of that train in the sprint, and then obviously had his main race a little derailed by that puncture. You could argue that he should have gotten by Pierre Gasly at the end, but I'm sure he did have some damage on that floor from the puncture. And Qatar is not the easiest place to overtake. There's only one overtaking zone, so I'm not going to fully fault him from that. I think it's a solid B. Good weekend from Carlos.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, honestly, finishing sixth after that puncture, that's not a bad result. Kind of a good recovery from Carlos. So I've also given him a B. I think he is a great driver. And, given the circumstances in the main Grand Prix, that was a great finish for him. And he was pretty close to catching Pierre at the end, but just couldn't quite do it. But yeah, good race for him despite the circumstances. So I've also gone with a B.
Yeah, and the fans agree. They gave him a B as well. Charles Leclerc started the sprint in fifth, finished in fifth, started the main race in fifth, finished second. I have given Charles Leclerc an A. I think this was a solid weekend from Charles. I think there was no reason that Ferrari should have finished second. I think it was slower than the McLarens. It was slower than Max Verstappen in the main race, and it was slower than George Russell in the main race, and Charles Leclerc dragged that thing to P2. I think that is a very solid weekend from Charles. It is keeping Ferrari in the constructors' fight, somehow helped them close the gap to McLaren at a track that McLaren should have been the strongest. And so I think he is very deserving of an A this weekend.
I also agree. I've given Charles an A. He really was pretty consistent over the course of the weekend, and in the main Grand Prix, he seems like he was the only driver to kind of avoid any drama and chaos, and that ultimately ended up in a P2 for him, which is crazy. So it was a great weekend from him, and that's what Ferrari's going to need next weekend is another solid, consistent Charles Leclerc performance to uh, win the constructors title. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that is a classic Charles Leclerc weekend of just flying under the radar and bringing home a solid result. I feel like we have seen that a lot from him since he has joined Ferrari, and maybe they haven't been the class of the field. I feel like he's had a lot of weekends like that. George Russell started the sprint in second, finished in third, started the main race in first, finished fourth. I have gone with an A minus for George Russell. I think it was a good weekend from him. I think it was an above average weekend from him. He outperformed his teammate, finished on the podium for the sprint, just missed out on the main Grand Prix. But I think he left a little bit on the table this weekend. You look at his weekend, maybe he should have found a way past Oscar in the sprint. Maybe he should have been on the podium in the main race. And so it was a good weekend from him, especially excelled in qualifying, where we didn't really expect the Mercedes to have that one lap pace. And based on Lewis Hamilton, maybe it didn't have that one lap pace, and George was getting the maximum out of it and more. But I do think he left a little bit on the table. So I'm going to go A minus for George Russell.
I'm gonna change my ranking for George on the spot here. I had initially given him an A, but I'm gonna go with a B plus.
A B
I think
plus, real big downgrade.
big downgrade, big downgrade. But what makes me change my mind in the moment is I agree with everything you said. It's he probably could have had a better sprint, qualified really, really well, but all that drama about pole position and qualifying, and it just seems like the way that he was treating other drivers in the stewards room. I know that came from Max's mouth. It's kind of just he said, she said at this point, but Max doesn't often speak ill of other drivers' character. He may speak ill of their driving ability, and the way they perform on the track, but not particularly their character outside of the car. Um, and so I just think that was kind of a poor showing for George there. And then he wasn't even able to get a podium after starting in P1 for the race. Not that, I mean, the Mercedes had okay pace, but it seemed like George had the pace to stay up there, but he didn't do it. Um, and Max ended up winning the race anyway. So, yeah, that's why I'm giving George a B plus. Maybe a little controversial call there, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that the Mercedes had the pace to win, but you would have liked to see George put a little more fight in there. He lost positions pretty much immediately in both races, so you would have liked to see him put a little more effort into it. Maybe not that controversial because the fans gave George Russell a B. Lewis Hamilton started seventh for the sprint, finished in sixth, started the main race in sixth, finished in 12th. I'm giving Lewis Hamilton a C. It was not a great weekend from him. He was solidly outperformed by George Russell. Yes, he got the puncture that hampered his main race result, but he was nowhere towards the front or his teammate before that. He was off in the sprint, off in the main Grand Prix. I think he just doesn't agree with that car, and I'm going to give him a C.
yeah, I'm giving Lewis a B minus. I think his attitude, with kind of in the media interviews I watched was pretty poor this weekend. He obviously was unhappy with the puncture, in the race, and that really kind of was a big reason why he finished outside the points, I think. But so that's why I'm not giving him a C. But I think it was a pretty poor weekend from Lewis. I think you're right, he doesn't agree with that car. I think he's kind of dealing with these mixed emotions of all the success and great times he's had with Mercedes. And he's kind of leaving on a poor note with them. It's been a season of ups and downs, especially for Lewis and Mercedes. He's had some great moments and he's had some really poor moments, and I'm sure that's frustrating. And these past couple races haven't been the best moments for him. Las Vegas was pretty good, but Qatar obviously wasn't. So it's I think it's just weighing on Lewis, and that's why I'm sticking with that.
Yeah, both of us changed our grades on that one, but I think we ended where we're happy. The fans agree with me. They gave Lewis Hamilton a C, truly hoping that he can end it on a bit of a higher note in Abu Dhabi. Sergio Perez started the sprint from the pit lane, finished 20th, started the main race in ninth, and did not finish. Here it is, the very first one of the driver report card series. Sergio Perez gets an F. Horrible, horrible weekend. Knocked out an SQ1, overtaken by Franco Colapinto from the pit lane. Starts in ninth. We're all celebrating that he made Q3, which is absurd. And then he's running fine. He's in P5. He's going to score some points. And then he spins on his own and burns the clutch out, trying to get it back on the track, which he rejoined in an unsafe manner, caused himself to DNF. It's terrible. Rumors are coming out that he is going to be leaving Red Bull. Still not going to fully believe it until I hear it from Christian Horner himself and see someone else drive that car. But it's being reported from more major sources now than it has ever been before. I agree. It needs to happen. He is on a terrible run of form. This was a horrible weekend as well. He gets an F.
Yeah, I totally agree. Full F for Sergio. This kind of reminds me of Baku when, well, I guess the sprint doesn't remind me of Baku. That reminds me of every other weekend this year. But in the main Grand Prix, he was doing fine. He qualified, still not where he should have, but he made Q3, qualified in a position that was going to allow him to take advantage of some points for Red Bull, which they oh so desperately needed right then. And then, yeah, he kind of makes a driver error, causes himself not to finish the race, and then, you know, I don't know. I don't even think Kit Kat can save him now, or whoever is his major sponsor. But yeah, just a bad weekend from Sergio. The rumors are the strongest they've ever been. But like you said, we cannot believe it until Christian Horner says it himself. He was oh so close to saying something along those lines this weekend, but he didn't come out and straight up say it, which is still pretty weird to me, but that's where we're at. So,
It
yeah.
is clear that he is out of defenses for Sergio Perez. He didn't really know what to say in the media pin for Sergio's defense this weekend. The fans agreed. They also gave Sergio Perez an F. And last but not least, Max Verstappen started the sprint in sixth, finished the sprint in eighth, started the main race in second, finished in first. I've given him an A. Solid weekend for Max. Obviously, qualified on pole and had it taken away from him, but still managed to win that Grand Prix. He does get downgraded a little bit for the sprint, not his best performance, but I think that Red Bull was a handful, and they managed to turn it around for the main Grand Prix, and Max showed his true pace, that car's true pace. Solid weekend from him. He gets an A from me.
I've run with an A minus for Max. I think the only reason why he gets an A minus and not anything higher is because of the sprint. He didn't qualify very well. Obviously, the setup wasn't as competitive on Saturday as it was on Sunday. And yeah, Max had an okay sprint. He lost positions, which usually doesn't happen for Max Verstappen. He was still able to get some points though. Um, and yeah, so I've gone with an A minus, but fantastic race from him. Fantastic Sunday drive. It was simply lovely. Just another, I don't know. Max Verstappen seems like one of those drivers that is just, he's on fire right now. He's still the best driver on the grid at the moment in the current cars. And so he's doing a great job. Picks up another win. Nothing more to say about it than that.
Yeah, anytime I see Max Verstappen win, I immediately want to give him a high grade because I'm not convinced that that Red Bull is the fastest car or even close to the fastest car. So I'm happy we both put Max in the A range. The fans gave Max Verstappen an A plus. They're very impressed with Max Verstappen's performance this weekend. And there we have it. That is it. That is all of our driver grades from the Qatar Grand Prix weekend. Brandon, before we get out of here, what are your parting podium thoughts?
This is a lot of fun. I'm excited to be able to take a deeper look into a driver's weekend and be able to talk about everyone because we don't always get the chance to do that in our recap podcasts. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to continuing to do it. If you guys like it, please let us know in the comments or by liking and subscribing, all that stuff. If you didn't like it, please subscribe. Maybe I'll leave a negative comment. I don't know. But anyway, this was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for watching. There's my podium thoughts.
Yes, we will be continuing this into the end of this year and all throughout next season. And we do want you guys to participate. So make sure that you head over to all of our social medias to make sure that your voice is heard in our Driver Grade podcast. But thanks for watching or listening to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast. And we will see you in the next one.
See ya.